Good evening. An era has come to an end in Cuba. Fidel Castro has died at the age of 90. Castro's death was announced on Cuban state television by his brother Raul Castro. The dictator has been in poor health since 2006 and formally ceded power to his brother 2 years later. The former Cuban president took power in 1959 in a revolution and ruled Cuba for nearly 5 decades with his totalitarian regime. He held on to power longer than any other living national leader except Queen Elizabeth II. He defied the power of 10 U.S. presidents during his half-century rule. Cuban Americans are now rejoicing in the wake of the former dictator's death. As news spread last night, hundreds of Cuban Americans spilled out into the streets of Little Havana in Miami, clanging onto pots and pans. Those celebrations continued in the streets today outside the famous Cuban restaurant Versailles. Cuban Americans say this moment signifies great hope and change.
Now in the next hour.
I've been waiting for 56 years for this night. And I thank God that it happened the day after Thanksgiving. It's over. Yeah. At least it's over. The brother's still there, but I hope and pray that soon he will be out of there as well.
You know what? My grandfather suffered a lot to see the man that took everything from him, to see him dead today. So you know what? This is an emotional day for me today as a Cuban American.
We were having dinner and we all wanted to come here. It's a very big deal. My mom had to leave in 1959 with nothing, and the fact that Fidel is dead, signs of like maybe a new beginning for the Cuba that we all loved.
Miami, Florida is home to tens of thousands of Cuban Americans, many who fled from Castro's rule or have family who fled. While Castro was reviled by many, others called him a hero who gave Cuba back to the people. Earlier today, I spoke to a former Canadian ambassador to Cuba who shared a unique friendship with Castro, getting a glimpse into the man behind the dictator.
Hombres pueden morir. There'd be this knock on the door, boom, 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 and he'd show up, and he's very big, imposing, big barrel-chested, he's a big beard. He would block out the sunlight in the door frame.
The stirring silhouette which stood before Mark Entwistle, the fiery Fidel Castro.
So he'd come in, he'd invite himself in, and he'd come and sit there and chat with me, have a gin and tonic or whatever, that was his drink, and we'd talk about all kinds of things. It was bordering on surrealistic, but fascinating.
It was the mid-90s. Mark Entwistle was the Canadian ambassador to Cuba. The Soviet Union had just collapsed. Overnight, Cuba lost 2/3 of its GDP. It was a tumultuous time in Cuban history, though Canada's diplomatic relations with the island nation remained intact. Suddenly, Canada became an important player in the international game. It led to a relationship between an ambassador and a revolutionary, giving Entwistle near unprecedented face time with one of the most revered and hated men in the world.
I used to get these famous phone calls, you know, at 12 midnight to go to the palace or the office of the president, and where we'd spend the whole night, and he'd pepper me with questions about Canada.
The former ambassador says Castro had deep respect for Canada, one which went beyond his famous friendship with Pierre Trudeau.
I was fascinated by the way we did things, the way we organized ourselves, the way our systems worked, how we managed the Americans, or attempted to manage the Americans. It was all part of his natural curiosity.
America was at the center of many late-night conversations between the two. It was no secret the CIA had attempted to assassinate Castro on several occasions. Entwistle says the dictator was especially concerned with having his food poisoned.
He would come to dinner at the residence. They would bring food tasters with them. But yeah, that's exactly his life. That's how he had to live it.
Though fascinated during their discussions over gin and tonics, Entwistle says he was under no illusions that the man before him had sent many to their deaths, imprisoned tens of thousands, and ruled with an iron fist.
Tough guy, though, but you know, make no mistake about that. Not the world's best listener. Tended to wish to share his own views. You never knew exactly what he would ask. He would ask sometimes the most arcane questions about things like how on earth would anybody actually know the answer to this? And I think he was always testing and prodding and pushing.